Bridger's laughter cracked through the room like a whip. A plane ticket? That's it? He howled, pounding the polished armrest of grandfather's leather chair until his champagne nearly spilled. Waverly's phone was already out, recording, her glossed lips parted in disbelief. "This is too good," she whispered into the camera. "Nolan got a plane ticket." My envelope, thin and wrinkled, felt like a cruel joke in my hands. My cousins had just inherited a fortune that could buy and sell cities, while I stared down at a one-way ticket to Monaco. The humiliation burned hotter than the scotch in the glasses clinking around me. But 24 hours later, when I stepped off the plane in Monaco, a man in a dark suit approached like he had been waiting his entire life for me. He leaned close, his cologne sharp, his accent smooth as steel, and whispered 7 words that snapped my world in half. The will reading had been theater, staged the way grandfather loved everything. Decadent, dramatic, and controlled down to the last detail. The Connecticut estate was buzzing with black limousines and politicians shaking hands in the foyer. Inside the study, heavy with cigar smoke and the weight of old money, the lawyer read each name with grave precision. Bridger's envelope was opened first. Real estate holdings worth tens of millions. Entire towers in Manhattan. Classic cars collectors would kill for. He raised his arms like a prizefighter. "I knew it," he gloated. "The legacy continues." Waverly's turn came next. Hampton's mansions, a private island off the coast of Maine, and 3 vintage yachts with names that belonged on magazine covers. She squealed, spun in her chair, and shouted, "This changes everything. My brand just went global." Her assistant caught every second on film, her tears of gratitude rehearsed for 1 million followers. And then there was me, Nolan Hayes, a teacher who scraped by on a salary that barely covered rent in Queens. My grandfather, Arthur Penrose, had never hidden what he thought of me. I wasn't ambitious, I wasn't dazzling, I wasn't a Penrose. He'd said so to my face more than once. Which is why, when the lawyer slid a crumpled envelope toward me, Bridger choked on laughter and Waverly bit down on a smirk. "To my grandson Nolan," the lawyer read, "I leave this." That was all. No properties, no priceless collections, just a ticket to Monaco shoved into my palm like a parting insult. The cousins roared. Waverly mouthed to her camera, "Can you believe this?" I stayed silent, but something inside me flickered. Not anger, not shame, something sharper. Because Arthur Penrose didn't make careless decisions. If he gave me nothing, or what looked like nothing, it was deliberate. And deliberate with him always meant dangerous. As the family clinked glasses to their new wealth, I walked out into the October rain. My parents trailed me to the car, their faces soft with sympathy. My mother, Emma, touched my sleeve. "He never understood you," she said gently. My father, David, slid behind the wheel, his carpenter's hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to leave prints. "Maybe that's a good thing," he muttered. They didn't know. None of them did. That envelope was not the end. It was the beginning. When I landed in Monaco the next evening, jet-lagged and carrying only a small duffel bag, I barely made it past customs before a man intercepted me. His suit was cut to perfection, his shoes shining like mirrors. He knew my name before I spoke it. He leaned down, his voice a razor across my ear. "Your grandfather didn't die the way they told you." And just like that, everything shifted. My mother's hand tightened around mine, as though she were bracing herself for a blow. Dad stood rigid, his jaw locked, the way it always was when he was one word away from an explosion. "To my daughter, Emma Penrose Hayes," Mr. Thorne read, his voice calm but slicing all the same. Mom sat straighter, her lips pressed together. "I leave the sum of $100,000 and my collection of first edition books, with the hope she finds in their pages the wisdom I could never give her." The room shifted, full of unspoken judgment. 100,000. Respectable to most people. But here, among millions being tossed like confetti, it felt like a consolation prize. The books might have value, but everyone understood the real message. She had married for love, not empire. This was the price. "Thank you, Father," Mom said quietly, her voice steady in a way that made me proud and furious at the same time. She didn't let him win, even in death. And finally, Thorne continued, sliding out a battered envelope like it had been fished from the trash. "To my grandson, Nolan James Hayes." The laughter in the room died. Even Waverly paused her typing. Thorne placed the envelope in my hand. My name was scrawled across the front in Arthur Penrose's unmistakable script, though the handwriting was oddly rushed, uneven. My fingers shook as I tore it open. Inside was one thing, a first-class plane ticket. JFK to Nice, France, with a connecting flight to Monaco. Departure tomorrow at 8 a.m. Folded around the ticket was a scrap of paper, torn at the edges. 6 words in that same hand. First class. Don't miss the flight. 3 seconds of silence. Then Bridger erupted. His laughter bounced off the study's leather and mahogany walls until it stung my ears. You've got to be kidding me. A plane ticket? That's it. He doubled over, falling off his chair, clutching his stomach. Nolan's inheritance is a vacation. The man left you a trip to Monaco. Waverly snatched the envelope before I could react, her manicured nails flashing under the chandelier. It's real, she gasped. It's an actual ticket. Not even open-ended. Tomorrow morning. Oh my God, this is priceless. He gets one night in Monaco while we get actual estates. She shoved the ticket back toward me and dissolved into giggles. At least it's first class, Nolan. Consider it charity. Maybe it's a test, Bridger smirked, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. If you don't go, you get nothing. If you do go, you get nothing, except a nice view of the Mediterranean. Incredible. Maybe there's a hotel reservation too, Waverly chimed. A single night at some 2-star dive. Be sure to post pictures, cousin. We'll think of you while we're busy managing millions. My cheeks burned, but I said nothing. Every jeer felt like a slap, not because they were wrong, but because they were right. On its face, it was exactly what it looked like, a dismissal. One last move to push me aside, even in death. Then Aunt Genevieve's voice, cool and sharp, sliced through the laughter. Well, Father always did things with purpose. Perhaps this is his way of telling Nolan to broaden his horizons before he returns to teaching. Her pause lingered cruelly. A noble profession, I suppose. That's enough, Dad said, his voice low and dangerous. He rarely raised it, but when he did, the room froze. You've had your fun. The message is clear. The carpenter's son doesn't deserve what the banker's son does. We understand. Don't be dramatic, David, Uncle Reginald said dismissively. It's not personal. Arthur knew some people are born for empires. Others, he flicked his hand at me. Well, they're built for smaller things. Like building homes that last, Dad shot back, his voice edged with steel. Not glass towers destined to crumble in 30 years. The room broke into arguments, voices overlapping, but I barely heard them. My eyes were fixed on the ticket, the paper trembling between my fingers. Don't miss the flight. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom, the same room where I'd memorized the periodic table and dreamed about a world that never quite included me. My old textbooks still lined the shelves, the faded treehouse Dad had built for me visible through the window. This house had permanence. The ticket in my hand felt like a glitch in the rhythm of that permanence. Dad knocked once before coming in, carrying 2 bottles of beer already opened. He sat on the edge of the bed, the old mattress groaning under his weight, and handed me one. You don't have to go, he said after a sip. Your grandfather moved people like chess pieces his whole life. Don't let him move you from the grave. But what if it means something? I asked, peeling at the beer label. What if it doesn't? Dad countered. What if it's just another trick? You've got kids depending on you Monday morning. A life here. A good one. Before I could answer, Mom appeared in the doorway, her pajamas patterned with tiny musical notes, holding a mug of tea. She sat on my other side and touched the ticket like it might vanish. I think you should go, she said softly. Dad stared at her. Emma, he humiliated our son in front of everyone. You want him to reward that? She shook her head. Not reward. Understand. Arthur Penrose was never frivolous. Not once. Every move he made had intention. And a week before he died, he called me. Both of us turned toward her in shock. He called. He sounded different, Mom said quietly. Tired, but clearer than I'd heard him in years. He said, I've been watching Nolan. He has something the others don't. He'll understand when it's time. I thought it was rambling. But now, her eyes flicked to the ticket. Now I think this is what he meant. Dad stood and paced to the window, muttering, this is madness. A wild goose chase. It's one day, Mom said firmly. One flight. If it's nothing, Nolan comes home. If it's something, he'll know. I stared down at the ticket, the flight number glowing back at me like it was alive. Finally, I said, I'll go. Dad turned, eyes glassy but fierce. He pulled me into a hug that crushed the air from my chest. Then you go with your head high. Don't let them make you feel less than you are. Which is what? I asked, my voice muffled against his shoulder. Mine, he said simply. And that's worth more than all their millions. The next morning came too soon. None of us slept much. Dad drove me to JFK in his old pickup, the smell of sawdust clinging to the seats. Mom handed me a neatly packed carry-on. Clothes, toiletries, charger. Just in case, she said. In case what? I asked. In case this isn't an ending, she said. But a beginning. At the airport, Dad gripped my shoulders and looked straight into me. Whatever you find, or don't, you're already enough. You don't need his approval. Ever. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed it yet. Hours later, the first-class cabin felt like another planet. Champagne before takeoff, leather seats wider than armchairs. I didn't belong here. Not with the suited executives tapping at laptops and the woman across the aisle murmuring in French. I drifted in and out of sleep, dreaming of Arthur Penrose's cold gray eyes. When I finally landed in Nice, the Mediterranean sunlight was blinding compared to New York's gray October skies. The short connection to Monaco gave me no time to think. The city unfolded beneath me, a glittering jewel box of yachts and villas carved into the hillside. I expected to find a hotel desk, maybe an envelope waiting for me. Instead, as I stepped through customs, I froze. A man in a black suit stood waiting with a sign. My name, but not Hayes. Penrose. He studied me with ice-blue eyes, his silvering hair perfectly combed, his suit tailored within an inch of its life. When I reached him, he leaned close, his cologne sharp, his accent precise. Welcome, Mr. Penrose, he said. Heir to the Castellano Foundation. The words landed like a blow. I'm sorry, what? Your grandfather was not only Arthur Penrose, he said evenly. Here, he was known as Alessandro Castellano. I stared, my mouth dry. That's not possible. But the man's faint smile told me everything had just begun. The car wound its way along the cliffside, sunlight bouncing off the Mediterranean until the entire horizon looked like fire on water. Vincent sat beside me, calm as stone, explaining what my grandfather had done in secret for 4 decades. Layer by layer, he said, his voice measured. Shell companies in Switzerland, holding firms in Luxembourg, trusts hidden in places even your cousins couldn't dream of. All of it funneling into one thing, the Castellano Foundation. Legal, invisible, untouchable, unless you were meant to see it. The driver stopped in front of a villa that seemed carved out of light. White stone walls climbed toward the sky, vines of bougainvillea spilling down in bright purple waves. When I stepped inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of cedar. And everywhere I looked, photographs. Hundreds of them. Arthur Penrose, the man I thought I knew, stood frozen in time in image after image. Reading books to children in a library in Bangladesh. Cutting a ribbon at a hospital in Nairobi. Kneeling in the dust at a refugee camp in Syria. Listening to a woman with eyes full of grief. This, Vincent said, watching me take it all in, was his real life. I couldn't speak. The foundation has built 230 schools across developing nations, he continued. 47 hospitals. 150 clean water systems. Over 1 million children have received medical care through these programs. All done quietly, under this name. No one in your family ever knew. I finally found my voice. But why? Why keep it hidden? Vincent walked toward the massive windows that framed the sea like a living painting. He tapped his iPad, and images appeared. Waverly on a yacht, champagne spilling into the ocean, laughter caught mid-scream. Then Bridger, chips stacked high at a casino in Las Vegas, money raining like confetti. Your grandfather watched them closely. He hired investigators. He wanted to see what wealth revealed. Vincent glanced back at me. He didn't like what he saw. My stomach nodded. So he wrote us all off? Not all, Vincent said softly. With another swipe, new videos appeared, grainy, captured from a distance. There I was, sitting in a dim classroom, tutoring Marcus, the kid who struggled with chemistry but never stopped trying. Another clip, me buying lab equipment out of my own pocket when the budget ran dry. Another, me at a Saturday science fair, clapping wildly as my students presented their projects. He watched you most of all, Vincent said. Every update, every report. He said you reminded him of who he was before money hardened him. He saw in you something he feared he'd lost. Changed him how? I asked quietly. Instead of answering, Vincent led me into a study lined wall to wall with books. From a shelf, he pulled a leather journal worn soft by years of use. He placed it in my hands. I opened it at random. Watch Bridger close another deal today. 3 family businesses destroyed so he could add a 0 to his account. Proud for 5 minutes. Sick for 5 hours. This is what I've made. Sharks who call blood success. Another entry. Nolan tutored students again for free. Cordelia raised him right, despite my best efforts to ruin her. He has Hollis's hands and her heart. Perhaps that's worth more than an empire. I swallowed hard. He built this place as penance, Vincent said, his voice low. He couldn't undo the man he became in America. But here, in secret, he tried to balance the scales. And now, my voice cracked. Now, Vincent said, looking straight at me, you must choose. Take control of the foundation, dedicate your life to it. Or walk away. Go back to America and never speak of this. But if you take it, your cousins can never know. If they did, they would tear it apart with greed and lawyers. His will in America is ironclad. But this survives only in secrecy. I stared at him. How much? $500 million, he said evenly. Generating $20 million a year for projects. Enough to move mountains, if stewarded carefully. I stepped onto the terrace, clutching the foundation papers Vincent had handed me. Below, the sea glowed gold under the sinking sun. My phone buzzed. A message from Bridger. Hope you're enjoying your vacation. Don't spend your teacher's salary at the casinos. We already divided up grandfather's wine collection. Oh, right, you didn't get one. I almost laughed. They were bickering over bottles while I stood with a responsibility that could outlive us all. Vincent joined me, setting 2 glasses of deep red wine on the railing. Your grandfather stood here when he made his choice. He said America had become his prison. This, he gestured to the horizon, was his escape. He kept me at a distance, I murmured. To protect this? No, Vincent shook his head. To protect you. He told me. Nolan has his father's hands and his mother's heart. He builds. He teaches. Let him believe he is overlooked. It will make him strong. Hunger creates character. Comfort destroys it. I thought of Maria, desperate to be a doctor but unable to afford SAT prep. James, whose parents worked themselves raw yet couldn't pay his application fees. Destiny, brilliant and doubting herself because no one in her family had gone to college. I exhaled. I'll do it. But on one condition. I keep teaching. Summers, breaks, I'll manage the foundation. But I won't leave my students. They need me. I need them. Vincent smiled for the first time. He predicted you'd say that. He pulled out a folded page in Arthur's handwriting. Nolan will want to keep teaching. Let him. A teacher who becomes a philanthropist will change the world. A philanthropist who remains a teacher will save it. For 2 days, I immersed myself in the foundation's files. Schools in Cambodia where girls learned to read for the first time in generations. Hospitals in Sudan where children with cleft palates smiled after surgery. Villages in Honduras where clean water cut infant deaths in half. Each project bore his notes, careful, relentless, a man clawing at redemption. On my last morning, Vincent revealed what sealed it. He started this after your mother married your father. When she chose love over wealth, he saw how wrong he'd been. But Bridger was already hardened in his image. Waverly already drifting the same way. You were his last chance. The flight home felt different. I wasn't the man who had boarded with nothing but a crumpled envelope. At Sunday dinner, Bridger couldn't help himself. How was your cute little vacation? Enlightening, I said, scooping salad while he bragged about his Ferrari. Waverly giggled, phone propped against a vase. Did Grandpa leave you anything there? Maybe a nice watch? A timeshare? Just perspective, I replied. Mom caught my eye, smiling faintly. Dad squeezed my shoulder. They didn't know the details, but they understood the change. Not money. Purpose. 6 months later, an after-school program at my school had mysteriously received funding. New lab equipment appeared over spring break. Every AP chemistry exam fee was quietly covered. Maria got into medical school on a scholarship from a foundation no one had heard of. James had his college applications paid. Destiny found herself with a mentor who guided her straight into MIT. My cousins never asked why I seemed so calm. They were too busy flaunting yachts and arguing over property taxes. Bridger was already losing millions on reckless deals. Waverly was burning through her inheritance on private jets and influencer retreats. Meanwhile, the Castellano Foundation built 12 new schools in Myanmar, funded a malaria program in Tanzania, brought clean water to 50,000 people in Guatemala. Quietly, anonymously, I kept the crumpled envelope in my desk drawer at school, beside photos of my students. Sometimes I'd hold it, remembering the humiliation in that study. They got what they wanted. I got what I needed. The last page of Arthur's journal said it best. They received what they could see. You received what they could never understand. Wealth was my success. You are my legacy. Money vanishes in a generation. Lives changed ripple forward forever. He was right. Bridger was already sinking. Waverly was already chasing emptiness. But a girl in Cambodia had just been accepted to university. A boy in Kenya was running marathons after heart surgery. A village in Peru had not lost a single child to dirty water in 2 years. Some secrets are worth guarding. Some legacies are worth living. And sometimes the smallest gift, a crumpled envelope with a plane ticket, holds more weight than all the visible wealth in the world. Arthur Penrose gave me what my cousins will never have, the chance to matter. And that is the only inheritance worth keeping.